They're small, they're green, they like to scuttle, they don't like dogs or horses, and usually there is a lot of them. Hi, I'm RevloGM, and welcome to the show where we deconstruct the construct, break down the beast, and dissect the devil. Not literally. This is Meet the Monster, and today we're taking a look at our first humanoid, the Goblin Warrior. Monster Core once says this about the Goblin Warriors. The frontline fighters of Goblin tribes prefer to fight in large groups, especially when they can outnumber their foes at least 3 to 1. Goblins are quite synonymous with Pathfinder, at least for me, always smiling with these very wide faces, and they're very green. They also are one of the playable races in Player Core 1, which is really cool. These ones, however, are the ones you come across because they maybe want your stuff, or maybe you're in their territory, or perhaps there is some other reason. Many goblins are civilized people, and many toe the line and can still be reasoned with, just like with any civilizations. Some just love chaos though, and there things may come to blows. If that is to happen, Goblin Warriors are likely to make up a large part of that fighting force. These guys are, of course, level -1, with the small, goblin and humanoid traits. Goblin means this guy is a goblin, and that's about it for an enemy NPC. Humanoid usually means 2 arms, 2 legs, and most importantly, the ability to reason, much like humans. How much they reason is up to you, of course, but they're likely to have more cunning, planning, and possibly fear than insects, undead, hands, and brooms that we've covered thus far. Keep this in mind when running them. Learning information about them requires the usual DC 13 Society Humanoid roll, a DC 11 on specific lore, or DC 8 specific lore, which is nothing new. That's the same across pretty much all the things we've covered. These guys move at about the same speed as most PCs, 25 feet, and also possess dark vision, so are capable of operating well underground or at night. They aren't the most perceptive though, with only +2 to their perception, though perhaps that is as they prefer to be the ones doing the sneaking. They have a +5 to their stealth and acrobatics to back this up, which is pretty good, as well as a +2 athletics and +1 nature, so they know how to utilise what strength they have, and at least a passing interest in the natural world around them. Their strength is a +0, dex +3, con +1, intelligence +0, wisdom -1, charisma +1. Defensively, the Goblin Warrior has an AC of 16, usually wearing leather armour, so that's quite high, thanks to their high dex, but 6 hit points quite low, with a +5 fortitude save, not bad, +7 reflex, quite good, and +3 will, which isn't great, but that checks out. Offensively, they have short bows and dog slicers. I told you, they don't like dogs. A short bow has a +7 to hit, followed up with a +2 and a -3 for 1d6 piercing damage with a range increment of 60 feet, so it starts getting penalties as it gets further away beyond 60 feet. Reload 0, so you don't just spend any actions reloading this weapon after you fire. And most importantly for their combat prowess, deadly D10. This is an additional dive damage you roll and add onto any critical hit damage in addition to doubling the usual damage when the arrows strike true. The dog slicer is a finesse weapon, so also a +7 to hit, but also agile, so it's a +3 and a +1 on follow-up attacks. It deals 1d6 slashing damage and has the backstabber trait, which means when you hit an off-guard creature with it, this weapon deals 1 precision damage in addition to its normal damage. It's kind of like a sub-sneak attack kind of ability for the weapon itself. It makes sense for the goblins and works well with their additional action, so let's take a look. So I say action, but rather it's a reaction. Goblin Scuttle, which is a great name. Trigger, a goblin ally ends a move action adjacent to the warrior. Effect, the Goblin Warrior steps. Stepping is when you move 5 feet, usually, without triggering reactive strikes. Do you get it? If a second goblin moves in to attack you, and there is already one goblin there, that goblin can then step, so you're flanked if need be. Then you're off guard, and they are more likely to hit you and do more damage. Pretty cool. That's the Goblin Warrior. A sneaky horde enemy that's quite decent in melee with their flanking prowess, but also quite dangerous at range. Though they're still quite squishy if you can manage to land a hit on them. Let's see how our party deals with them. Skip here if you're not too fussed about the combat. At the very least, a couple of errors in this one, so I'll mention them, apologies, but our party have been surprised by some goblins on leaving a mine, and they come to blows. We roll initiative. Radisi is up first. She starts by casting her greatest at them to give +1 to attacks damage and saves against fear effects for her party, and then casts Daze against one of these goblins. Their will saves are bad, and he rolls a 2. That's a critical fail, so 5 damage doubled, that's 10. The goblin just falls flat. That's not a great start for him. This goblin sees that and panics, runs out the way, and gets himself into cover behind this cart, and then attempts to hide. 15, it's not a bad roll, but you know, if people move forward, they are just going to see him quite easily anyway. Masal raises her shield and advances, and not wanting to get right up to the enemies, attempts to intimidate one of them. This means they have to come to her, which, you know, wastes their actions rather than hers. It does succeed, but it still becomes fighting to one as a result. The next goblin is up. He has his bow out, and he takes a shot at Masal and completely misses it. so decides to move and get into cover instead. Exemplo is next. He spends an action sending Katachura into cover because goblins don't like dogs, and moves into cover himself. And our Rin can move his 10 spaces as a gunslinger. Takes a shot, realizes he's reloads, and takes a shot at a goblin, and that is a crit. Goblin is dead, and this goblin takes 1 splash damage as well. Rin can also then reload. That is his 3 actions. This goblin moves in to attack. He should have moved 1 more space. We'll see why in a moment. But gets really bad luck, misses both attacks. This other goblin moves over here. That's not how Goblin Scuttle works, we'll see it properly in a moment. But he attacks and would have hit even without the off guard, and do some damage, then Masao is able to reduce it. We're back at the start. Regisi is next. She attempts to use her Lingering Composition, but that fails the check. But I mean, she doesn't expend the focus point, which is nice. She will use Courageous Anthem again to give everyone +1 to their attacks, and then uses Kinetic Ram to try and push one of the goblins away so it's not flanking, which does work as the goblin fails its Fortitude save. This goblin goes for Masao. Realizes, however, he can't get that far. He can only go to over here, but that means the other goblin can use the reaction to move there to flank, and that means he gets an attack, dealing some hefty damage to Masao because she can't use another reaction. She is up next, takes 1 swing and completely misses. The second swing, however, hits and just annihilates that goblin. Fighter damage is pretty deadly, and then re-raises her shield. This goblin moves down, takes another shot with his bow, and hits, but sadly only for 1 damage against Rajisi, and then takes cover once again. Exemplo casts a Caustic Blast towards this goblin, and we roll to see if he succeeds, and he does. And here, he should take half damage. He should take 1 or maybe 2. I can't remember if that'd be round up or down, which is found out, but he should not have taken all 3. That's my mistake, which means when Rin comes over here and bats him, if he should have taken 1 damage, I honestly assume if it's round up that it would have been dead. He takes a shot at the other goblin, and misses. If it was rounded up to 2, though, I guess the goblin would still be dead. This goblin has a bow out, takes another shot, but it's easily deflected by the shield of Masao, and he then moves into cover and attacks, and goes into cover. And that may have been fractions as well. I was very hot doing this, unfortunately, so I may have done some stupid things. Critical fail, and that will save from a UC casting Daze, takes out another goblin. And then Masao moves around and takes 1 more swing at this final goblin, and it goes down, and that's that. So as you can see from that, will saves are very damaging and they can be tricky to hit. But for fighters or gunslingers, a solid hit is likely to kill in 1 shot. They have good options for melee and ranged fighting, and really should probably be more using their bows, but we're going to showcase both their fighting styles in this case. If they were stealth more and you had your frontline fighters charge off to try and tackle the ones in the trees, and then you had some goblins come out and try and flank, say, our witch or our bard, they may have been a lot more devastating, a lot more effective, but unfortunately running these on the kind of schedule that I am, sometimes I don't have quite as much time to envision these little combat demonstrations as I would like, so apologies for that, but hopefully you get the idea. Now, what else could we do with these guys? Well, there are many more goblins for us to get to in the future, so that covers a lot of bases for goblins that are just stronger with magic and stuff like that already. The Goblin Commander is essentially just a beefier goblin warrior with a bigger stick. We'll cover them at the same time as a bunch of other level 1 goblins, so look out for that. But otherwise, what can we change? What could we update? What can we do to make goblins a little different? Well, embrace chaos, essentially. Goblins tend to love fire and flame most of the time, so maybe they've taken this to the extreme, igniting their armor in some kind of battle ritual, and then they go and try and jump and pounce on their foes to burn them. You could do similar things with tribes of goblins who maybe discovered a love of electricity or acid or some other element instead, and do similar things, perhaps. Along a vaguely similar line, goblins tend to be terrified of horses for some peculiar reason, but maybe a band of goblins discovered cows or deer or some other large 4-legged creature that can move at speed, which they aren't scared of, and now little groups of them ride those into battle like miniature versions of elephant riders or, you know, the guys of the Oliphants in Lord of the Rings. That could be quite an intimidating sight. We've got a bunch of goblins, some with their dog slicers, a couple with short bows, riding on this fast-moving horse equivalent thing, you know what I mean. And you could also throw in some nilbogs. I'm not going to go into detail onto what those are. They're not a creation of mine by any means, but I will pin a very quick video that does a good job of explaining what they are. But suffice to say that using sparingly, they can be a lot of fun. Of course, we are mostly looking at goblins here as antagonists. Keep in mind that they do not have to be. In Pathfinder lore, goblins hate vegetables in general, but really love pickles. Maybe some goblins sell the best pickles in town, or discover they like pickling other vegetables too, even if they don't like to eat them themselves, and have expanded their business. You could have a quest helping them expand into a new town, but a rival company there has been sabotaging their attempts, either because they don't like the competition, or because they're goblins, and, you know, you can get into that kind of stuff if you want to, because obviously there is that history. But they need you to help them deliver their stock safely. And honestly, anything else. Goblins can have many hopes and dreams as humans, elves, or anyone else in a fantasy world. So whilst in this video we are mostly covering them as monsters, remember that they can be much more than that. And that's it for this one. Any thoughts about goblins that you've run, or any differences you've made to goblins in your games? Let me know down in the comments. Be interesting to see. But otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.